Cody, welcome to Halloween Daily. Thank you so much for hanging out and talking to us today.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, anytime I get to talk to one of the illustrious few who have appeared on screen as Michael Myers in a Halloween movie, it's always an exciting time for me. And I've been lucky enough to interview a lot of those guys, and you're one of them. So I'm super stoked for this conversation today.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of us, but it also feels like it's a small family as well, So it's
Yeah.
cool. It's good to be a part of.
Definitely an exclusive crowd to be a part of. But before we get to the Halloween movie and your career, if you'll indulge us, we are Halloween Daily News, where every day is Halloween, and I know we just celebrated some other holidays as we're recording this, but it's always Halloween with us. So if it's all right, I'd like to start there, and I'll just ask, do you and your family celebrate Halloween? Is it something that you guys look forward to and go big on?
Well, I'm a huge Halloween fan. My wife is a huge Christmas fan. I think a lot of
Yeah.
families same thing.
Yep.
So yeah, go big on Halloween. I don't do too many big decorations, but we do a ton of like horror movie watching leading up to Halloween, and I like to do a lot of pranks on the kids. This year, I sourced a bunch of old masks and stuff from a family that I was helping move some stuff out, and they were like, "You want these old masks?" I was like, "Yeah." So every single day, I was always trying to get my kids, trying to mess with them, do all that kind of stuff, and man, my daughter was not having anything of it. But now she's kind of like, Dad, you don't really scare us anymore. And I think she like secretly likes being scared. That's it's the same thing as like a horror movie. Everyone likes being scared, right?
Yeah.
Exhilarating experience, especially if you know you're actually safe in the moment. So yeah, it's Halloween it was a lot of fun, man. We go over to nearby neighborhood. Kids always trick or treat, and we usually we do like a hayride with them to go trick or
Hmm.
treat with, so they can go from house to house because the house is a little bit further apart. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then but right after that, Christmas comes up, and it's just like constant decoration stuff. And I do decorations for other people, so
Oh,
that's
cool.
kind of my side hustle during the Christmas holidays and stuff like that, because I like getting on the ladder and getting things done. So, but it's always a kind of a sad thing when I have to go from Halloween to Christmas. I'm not a huge Christmas person, but that's the
Yeah.
time I'm money. But but Halloween's always fun. It's always fun.
And you've got kids too, and that's always fun too when you can, have fun with them and kind of relive it from their point of view too. Do you have fond memories yourself growing up as a kid of Halloween?
Oh, dude, I was always one of those kids that never did a costume that was a actual thing, other than like I think when I was younger, I did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles costume or something like that when I was really huge Ninja Turtle fan growing up, and I didn't know anything about the comic books. I grew up just in the cartoons, and later on read the comic books. But yeah, I would like make random costumes and stuff all the time, and that was kind of like my funnest thing about Halloween. But yeah, no, like we had a lot of good. But I was way out in the country, so it was kind of hard to trick or treat. We really had to like go to like my mom would literally drive us to neighborhoods, and we'd go hit people's houses that we knew in those neighborhoods. That was
Yeah.
our today. So it's cool here because we're kind of close to a subdivision. So all of our friends live in, we still live kind of out in the country, but our friends live in subdivision. So we go with them and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, dude, but my favorite thing during Halloween is like making my kids watch classic horror movies
Yeah.
and the new ones. Like there's some really good ones out there, some really good new ones, and underrated in my opinion. Like I think that the horror genre has really expanded to a degree where it's like kind of not just expanded but perfected, right? So when you
Mhm.
watch movies, like you see everything they got right, and then you see the new movies that actually improve upon that, as opposed to the new movies that are kind of just going kind of all over the place. There's good ones and there's bad ones, right? And
Yeah.
there's no shortage of films in the horror genre, and I'm here for all of it. But like there's sometimes like you get movies like maybe like Hereditary, or all the Annabelle series are really just well done high, and it's not just about budget, it's just about storytelling and just that way of like building it up.
Yeah.
But like yeah, I love like taking my kids through like every like week we'll watch a different horror movie, and what was our last one we watched? I think the last one we watched was The Nun. It was a new one.
Yeah.
The Nun, The Nun 2. And a lot of people are like, you let your kids watch that? I'm like, yeah, my kids, like, and those are good horror. Like, I think that I love some good gore too. But I think the best thing about a horror movie is not just about like what it does in the movie, but what it makes you feel. You know,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and exploring what that means, like so there's something special about horror movies. It's almost like a Jungian archetype, it's like the idea of like, what's the cool way that they're trying to explain different emotions or spirituality or fear and just all this different kind of stuff and manifesting it through a horror movie. So I like to show my kids that. It's super fun.
And I love that you're educating them on classics, and also you're enjoying the new stuff together. Now how old are they?
Got an 11 and a 13-year-old, 11-year-old girl, 13-year-old boy.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like us. We tried to raise our boys and teach them the classics, as they got older, and then expose them to the newer stuff as they got more mature and stuff. So I hear you on that. That's definitely one of our favorite parts of the holiday experience too, is the horror movies, and it seems like everybody gets into it in the fall as well. And then we always have to ask, you said you made a lot of your own costumes, so we always ask, what was your favorite Halloween costume that you've worn and your favorite Halloween candy or treat?
Man, when I was a kid, there was this one custom costume that I made. I think I was a little older. I think it was probably 12 or 13. But I made this whole like Nintendo boy costume, and I had the original Power Glove, and I had so I made like a belt out of an old Nintendo controller, and I had what was it, like not a Virtual Boy, it was some type of other thing that I got at a Goodwill or something like that. That was an old piece of something headset, and it was completely pieced out. So I used it as my costume. So I had a whole Nintendo costume where I imagine myself as like this like digital person or whatnot. And that was just it was cool because it was kind of where I've really spent a lot of time making it, So fun thing. I didn't really go for the scary costumes when I was younger. I went for the more creative costumes. It's only since I've been in a film that I've been able to don scary costumes and whatnot. So it's that, and my favorite candy, I'm just gonna have to say, it's probably gonna be, I don't think this is like bifurcating at all or divisive at all, but you said it, candy corn is terrible. But I'm a big fan of the mini Snickers. Like I love Snickers bars. And when you can get dude, this one neighborhood we go to, they're a little ritzier, and they hand out full-size candy bars. We're like, okay, every single house has the Costco bag of the size Snickers and stuff. So my kids don't like Snickers for some reason, so I always get all the Snickers. So I'm like, you got to pay the dad tax. Dad drove you there. Dad's riding on the keeping you safe during the hayride. You're gonna pay the dad tax and give him some Snickers bars. So yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, Snickers is probably my favorite too. It's classic. You can't go wrong with a Snickers. But man, the full size, yeah, that's awesome. And it's the dad tax on top of it. That's
dad.
So you said you're educating your kids on horror movies. Have you always been a horror fan yourself since you were a kid? When did you get into scary movies?
Yeah, I grew up in a really religious family, so and great people, but man, they were really against watching anything that kind of perceived evil. So I didn't really go to horror movies until the end of high school and college. But I was a criminology major in college.
Oh, wow.
And so criminology, a major in psychology with a focus in criminology. So man, it was instantly I started being drawn into the horror, franchise. So I would read about serial killers. I would read about all these different types of, real life characters. And then I would just think about how that made me feel reading books about them, reading stories about them, reading their case files, reading their psychological evaluations, and then seeing movies about that, and then seeing how that played into the horror genre itself. Seeing how when you see somebody like Michael Myers or Jason or any of these litany of different actual human characters that are playing murderers and just crazy madmen that come after you. But to me, it was something that I wasn't drawn into horror just because the way it made me feel. I'm interested in that, but I was so drawn into horror because of what it the story it tells about the human psyche, and how some people find refuge and their own internal fears and their own issues by working through the exhilaration and the fear of a horror movie. And how people get that from different areas. So with me, it's I've always had more of a draw towards like more spiritual horror movies, like stuff where like it's like a demon or something like coming after you, because I grew up in a religious environment, right?
Yeah.
So, but like people that don't grow up in that might have more of a lean towards, or people more on the logical side might have more of a lean towards like the slasher films and stuff like that, because to them that's a really real fear, you know, that like somebody bigger and stronger than you that with more power and energy might come towards, like, you know, kill you out of nowhere and you can do nothing about it. With me, it's like, you know, I've have years of being a police officer, so I was a cop for 5 years, so I've been in a lot of bad situations with big people, and you know, and through in dark buildings, so I'm not as scared of you know, a person as I am of like, I'm not even really scared of like the spiritual stuff anymore, because I have like a different view of like, what it psychologically means. But like I have that kind of like cool idea of like, well, this could be real in this psychological sense. So the psychological thrillers are more my genre, what gets me going, you know, really kind of like turns my what's that, like that you know, the crank inside of you that gets going when you really are in a horror movie. So like when I watch something like, you know, Friday the 13th or Halloween or all that kind of stuff, like I watch them, but I'm not scared in the same way that some people might be. To me, it's more of it's more of an interest in like, wow, this like, this really gets to some people, and I love that. Like that's, I think it's kind of why I played that character of Michael Myers so well, is because I've had like an interest in what makes a killer, and what makes people fearful about that, and what body motions might be more scary for whatever reason. You know, like this whole idea of like what I was doing, like Michael, is like this whole idea is the reason why the mask is so scary. Like what I've determined personally, I mean, it could be something different, but is that because of the mask and because of not really being able to see the eyes most of the time, it kind of simulates what they call in psychology the 1,000-yard stare, is where a person is literally not looking you in the eyes, they're looking past you, and you are just an object in the foreground. And it kind of dehumanizes the person that they're looking at. And you would see that a lot of time with murderers and people that you would interview that are that were, you know, psychopaths and sociopaths. So that mask really, because there's no expression on it, because you can't really see the eyes well, it feels like a 1,000-yard stare going through your soul. And it seems to be like something that like, because I knew, because I've worked, you know, done some like, you know, papers and films and stuff on killers, it's something that kind of made me interested in playing a character like that. And it was just kind of, it fell in my lap. Obviously, I did not go out seeking that, but it was something that I was like, man, I've kind of been training my whole life for this.
Well, it does sound like it, hearing that, you know, studying the criminology and being a police officer and being around all of that, and then being a horror fan yourself and getting into it through that way. But yeah, I wanted to ask that, when did you get into stunts and acting, and how did that come into it? At what point was that something that you said it just fell into your lap? So tell us,
Yeah,
walk us through that if you can.
I'll try not to go too like, it's a kind of a long story, but I'll give you the short version because I have a tendency to talk too much sometimes. The short, I was at college at Auburn University, and then I ended up going into the police force. You know, because I was getting married and all that kind of stuff. Wanted to make sure I was providing for my family. Always wanted to be in law enforcement. Was majoring in criminology, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, you know what, be in law enforcement. Did that for 5 years, and just really wasn't doing too well in terms of like money and things like that. I was like, man, we weren't getting paid enough. I loved the job itself. It was demanding, but you know, demanding is good. But if you're really just like starving every single day, and if a car, you know, repair can literally just wreck your entire finances, you might not be able to make your house payment, I was like, I got to figure out something else to do. Well, at that time, I was doing parkour every single day that I was off of work, and I'd been doing it at that point for I think 6 or 7 years. I started the parkour club at Auburn University. I was a member of the parkour team called the Tribe. It's from American Parkour, which is like one of the main you know, stateside parkour organizations. Still exists today, run by Mark Turok, amazing guy. I was actually my parkour manager for a while and the manager of the team and stuff. And we would do live performances and all that kind of stuff. You know, stuff like Sam's Club and the Men's Urban Athlon and Chicago. And so I did a bunch of like live performances doing parkour. Had done martial arts my entire life growing up, you know, Taekwondo, Sursanat, Jeet Kune Do, you know, done a little Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, all that, you know, just mixing it up all over the years.
Yeah.
And I was always interested in stunts. It was something that I always wanted to do, but I was from South Alabama, and it wasn't really a gateway, or what I should say, there wasn't really like a conveyor belt leading you to Hollywood. But when I was at Auburn, I met a few people in the stunt industry from parkour, and a guy named Max Calder, and he started doing parkour probably 2 years or a year prior to me, but it was from Atlanta, so he was a little bit closer to the new movie scene in Atlanta. With way back in the day, we're talking, gosh, 2006 probably. I mean, if I'm guessing, sometimes I don't do the dates too well in my head. I think it was around 2006, and it was right before, it was a year before X-Men First Class came out, because him and a buddy of mine, Brent Bernhard, he's an old stunt legacy. His dad's a coordinator and all that kind of stuff. They were traveling through, I think they were going to Mississippi or Louisiana because X-Men First Class was filming there. That or they just came from there and they were headed to Savannah for X-Men First Class. But X-Men First Class was filming somewhere and they were passing through Auburn, and he was like, "You want to have lunch?" So we stopped and had lunch, and he was just telling me all the stuff, how they're hustling to go get on these movie sets. A lot of times back in the day, not so much after COVID, but back in the day, the way you would get on a movie, a lot of times is just take your headshot and resume, go to a movie set, from word of mouth and all this other kind of stuff, hand your stuff to the coordinator and say, "Hey man, you're hiring. I'm looking for a job. Here's my skill set. Hope you'll have me, and just be nice and courteous, and hopefully they'll like you and you can get hired." So they were going to do that. We had dinner. And my wife was like, at the time it was my fiance, and she's like, "You're not doing this." Because I was like, I really wanted to do it. And she was like, "You're not doing this. It's not viable." Years later, when I was already doing policing for 5 years, this is probably, almost 5 years later, I did a few things on the side when I wasn't working. I did a few like non-union gigs through Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, doing like a little special thing for them. Did some industrials. And that was just doing, minor modeling and stunts and acting and all that kind of stuff. And finally, near the end of my policing career, I ended up, I was already SAG eligible, because my first job was doing a backflip on stage as Curly on the Three Stooges. So I had a shaved, because back in the day I had a buzzed head. I had a buzz cut, so they shaved my head completely like a cue ball. And I was clean shaven, and I was doubling Will Sasso, because the stunt guy that was doubling him, talented stunt guy, but he's big, just like Will Sasso. He's a big guy. He's I think he was like 240, so he's a big fella. Yeah. And but as a joke, they needed all three of them to do a backflip on stage, and it ended up being like in the extra credits or whatever. It was like during the credits roll. But go in, do this whole audition for it, like in Marietta. So I had to drive like almost 2 hours from Auburn to Marietta. I think it's like an hour and 45, but it was bad traffic. Go there, do like a 2-hour audition, doing all this tumbling and flips, because I'd been preparing for that. I'd already been doing parkour, and I did cheerleading in college and all this other kind of stuff. So I not at Auburn, but at a small community college before I got to Auburn. And so yeah, tumbling was kind of my thing. I got the job, and then did that, became SAG eligible. Came back, did some mini tramp stunts for him for the end of the movie. And then after that, I kind of just like chilled for a minute, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then I got into the movie business, first of all, with a coordinator named Bob Fisher on a TV show called The Originals, spinoff of the Vampire Diaries. So I ended up being a vampire and a werewolf on that show. I ended up being able to quit my job doing policing. Then I got on the Hunger Games, started doing the Mockingjay 1 and 2. Ended up maxing out on those films, like working nonstop on those films, playing peacekeepers and capital people. And I played the lizard people down in the sewers, the hybrid people, mutts. Yeah. So I mutts. There's only 7 of us, and so it looks like there's thousands of us, right? But there's only 7 of us. And we're doing all the motion capture in the actual sewers that we like, not real sewers, but they're like movie set sewers with real water and all this kind of stuff that they have completely contained, and doing all the interaction with the actors, and this big fight scene down when Finnick dies. Spoiler alert. When Finnick, and if you hadn't seen it by now, I'm sorry. So I'm going to continue. But yeah, so we did all that, and I've been doing a huge high fall off there, and a bunch of other kind of just like shooting guns and climbing up the trees, and it was a lot of fun. And then got into a bunch of other different films as a result of that. including, a bunch of Marvel films. I've been on Ant-Man and the Wasp. I've been on Double Thor and Endgame, all this other kind of
Oh
stuff. Just
wow.
not his main double. But I managed to get in there pretty luckily. So, yeah. So I mean, that's the short story, even though it was probably 10 minutes long.
Well, that sounds like it's been somewhat of a whirlwind then. I mean, from like, like you said, just kind of finding your way into it through these friends, and then all of a sudden you're off and running, and next thing you know, you're Michael Myers and you're Thor. And I mean, that's Endgame, that's like the biggest movie of all time. I mean, it's Michael Myers is horror royalty. I mean, these are some iconic characters. Um, can you walk us through a little bit of getting the Halloween gig? Um, Obviously you're a horror fan, so you know who Michael Myers is. I mean, what does that original film or that franchise mean to you? And did you know that was what you were auditioning for at the time?
No, here's the thing. I didn't have to audition for it.
Okay.
And stunt people, a lot of times you don't have to audition for the role. You're given the role based on what people already know about you. So your reputation is your audition a lot of times. Now, if you go on like there have been some TV shows and films where they'll have like a big audition where everybody comes in because the coordinator doesn't know anybody and he wants to see people in person. Try this, do this fight, do that. Give me a reaction so they can hire lots of people. But if you're getting hired on as a main double, it's usually through word of mouth, like somebody saying like, "Hey, this guy has done a good job for me in the past." The way I got the Michael Myers job was I'd done a couple jobs for Monty Simmons on The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is right here in Atlanta. It's actually in Sonoy. It looks like Sonoya on the map, but we call it Sonoy here. That's like 30 minutes from me. But so I've been on every season. I'm not a thin person, or like I don't look very emancipated, so I don't get to play a lot of zombies, but I have played zombies. Just depends on what level of zombie they're supposed to be, right? And but I've doubled a couple guys. I doubled Russ Blackwell on that show and a couple other things. Played some non-zombie characters and stuff too. Actually, fun fact on Walking Dead, I was the first and only zombie to ever fire a gun. So I'm a National Guard zombie that has a M16 strapped to across his neck, down on his waist, and he's like walking into I walk into this truck and it has rebar sticking out of the back of it, and the rebar gets caught in my trigger guard, and I'm moving forward, and the gun's firing. And the fun thing was, I actually had to do that. I actually had to not look at the rebar, try to feed that rebar into the trigger guard, fire that gun using the weight of my body and my elbow against the buttstock, and I was firing blanks out of that weapon while all the main characters were trying to jump into the trunk of a car and take off. So they told me, "Hey man, you're the first zombie, probably the only zombie to ever fire a gun." So I was like, "All right, that's pretty cool." So
Yeah.
On that show, and I think Monty, a lot of times stunt coordinators, if they try to get you on something and then it falls through, whatever, a lot of times they'll say like, "Hey, I'm trying to make it up to you because you cleared your schedule," all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember if that's what happened or if just me and Monty just get along real well. And I'd done other jobs for him on this TV show called Claws on I think it was on FX back in the day. I don't know what it's on now, but I think it went for a couple seasons, but it was the first season. And he was like, he recommended me to Tom Elliott, and Tom Elliott was doing the reshoots for the first Halloween movie, first new Halloween movie in 2018.
Yep.
And did we film it in 18 or 17? Did it come out in 18?
It came out in 18, but it was shot in 18 too, I think.
Yeah. I think it was the beginning of the year we shot it. It came out.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, it was in Charleston. He's like, and me to Tom Elliott. Tom Elliott's a LA guy, super good dude, but didn't know me, right? But somehow got this job out in Charleston. It happens all the time. He was like, "Hey, I need a guy that's around this size that can do this." Particular thing was the stair fall. So like the stair fall in the basement, where I'm going backwards down, essentially attic incline stairs, but down into a basement. And Monty was like, "Yeah, Cody can do it." And so he called me up and asked how I felt about it, and asked how I felt around fire and all that kind of stuff. And I'd done a couple fire burns here and there, and Not so much for film, just because I don't ever get those, but I've done them for training and things like that. And I've been on fire for real. And when I was policing and stuff like that, I had my legs catch on fire while trying to save somebody one time, and non-flame retardant pants. I never do that again. Got the scars to prove it, where the pants are like fused to my skin. So yeah, ended up doing that and going out to Charleston, and it was like about a week of reshoots. Did the fight with Jamie Lee, did the fall into the basement. Did a little bit of the fire stuff, but a lot of that fire stuff was actually James Jude down there being near the fire and all that kind of stuff. So we didn't have to catch on fire or anything like that. So I just did a few little shots, but all the ones that it's like where he's like looking back up at the thing, I believe that they used James Jude on that, because I don't think it was me. I tried to copy and meld with him as much as I can, but use that because he was adamant he was going to do everything that he could himself, right? A lot of that fight as well. So I don't know which parts are me and which parts aren't me, which is a good thing, right? So it's a good thing that held, because we're literally almost at probably the same exact height and weight. And I try to see, I'm watching. It's the thing on like what some people do is they'll just like kind of just creepily watch their actor on film, on the set all the time. Like, okay, how's he moving here? How does he pick up a cup? How does he turn his head? All this stuff. And then watching him on set, how does he do it when he's on the camera? And like when he's panning, when he's going this way and that way. So, yeah, it was a pretty cool experience, man. And yeah, he was good dude, real good dude. So,
yeah, we love James. We've gotten to know him a little bit over the last 5 years, and I've interviewed him a number of times, and yeah, he's awesome, and we just love everything he's brought to that role, and just the franchise and the respect he brings to it and to the fans and everything. And so you're there, and you say you're there for about a week of these reshoots. So you're there the whole time, and James is there, and Jamie's there. I mean, is it even registering at this point with you that like what a big deal this is, that like we were saying earlier, you're one of the few that are going to be on screen intercut with James as this character behind the mask? Is it even registering at that point, or is that point, is it just the task at hand?
At that point, I'd already been, and it sounds kind of weird to say this, but I'd already been around so many celebrities on set that like there's been a few times where I've been starstruck, right? But like at that point, I didn't know James from anything, right? Because he had some other creature stuff and whatnot. So it was really a fun thing to meet somebody and just get to be a dude with them, just get to be friends and not have any kind of weirdness between like, oh man, you're this huge superstar. Like obviously now he's a very famous person. People know him. Like people, will travel thousands of miles just to see him. Right. So it's like, that's really cool. So like, but getting to meet him whenever he is new in that role, and I'm getting to be just on a professional level with him. Like this is what we're doing. But like, it's hard just to be just straight up professional with James because he's just such a good guy. And he doesn't come off as like trying to be overly professional. He is professional, but he doesn't come off as trying to be like put on a front or put on anything like that. He's just like a guy that you can see as your friend, right? So, but when he puts on the mask, he's terrifying, right? So yeah, I didn't get really starstruck with that now. But I'll say this, Jamie Lee, I didn't really get starstruck, but when I realized that I was going to be working with Jamie Lee, I was like, oh, I knew her from True Lies. I know her from all these different movies growing up. And the fact that I was going to get to work with her, I thought it was like super cool. But any type of like, I get not nervousness, but any type of anxiety or any type of like, just kind of like, oh, what's it going to be like? It kind of went away immediately from the second that I met her, because I've heard people in the industry, not just people, writing a column for People or whatever, people in the industry talk about how awesome she is in real life and how she's just the most genuine person, just nice to everybody she meets. They're not exaggerating that. She was excellent. Like she was super cool. She probably remembered the choreography and the fight better than I did. Like, I don't know if she has like a dance background or all this other kind of stuff, but she is a talented individual. Her reactions are excellent. Like I was blown away from her in a professional sense, but on a personal level, I've never felt more at ease with a person. Like, and I think that's almost like a superpower of hers, that she can just make everyone around here feel at ease. That was my experience with her. So yeah.
That's awesome, and we have heard that about her, and we know all that's true about James that you were saying. And you mentioned that fall at the climax of the film, and I'm thinking of it. It goes by so quick in the movie, but just the logistics of that, like you said, it's that incline, and then it goes right from that to the iconic sit up, kind of recreating the sit up from the '78 film. Can you walk us through a little bit of the logistics of pulling that off, and how many times did you have to do it?
Yeah, I mean, so the coordinator was kind of nervous about it because, like, you never know what you're going to get when you hire a guy that you don't really know personally. So he was like, "Hey, we're not going to really rehearse it. I just want you just to go for it." And I come from a parkour background where it's kind of like you find ways to build up to what you're doing. And I'd never done a backward stair fall down that type of incline before. I've done backward stair falls down actual stairs. But when I say these stairs were like what comes out of your attic, like fold down stairs out of your attic. That's how steep they are, like that, right? So and the steps are this far apart. They're not a full, 10 inches or 10 inches like a normal stair step is. I was like, hey, I just need just literally a few minutes with two people spotting me on the sides of the stairs, so I know what my rotation going down the stairs and where my feet are going to land on the stairwell before I hit the ground. So I just know where my body's going to be when I motivate, so that I can make sure that I actually land flat on my back, because that was the safest possible way to land, but also creates the biggest thump, But obviously, if I land on my head, then that's going to be a career ender, because at the house that was there's at the actual house on the set I think, did they burn the house down or they tear it down or something like that? Somebody told me, the one in Charleston.
Yes.
Yeah. So that house did not actually have a basement. That house, I don't know if you've before, but that house had a 3 foot, not even 3 foot, it's probably 2.5 feet under the floor, like onto basically just hard dirt. So when I did that original hit, it was on the first day that I was doing this stunt. I'd take the reaction and I fall flat into this hole, and this hole is, I mean, probably it's not even wide enough on set. It's not even wide enough for my shoulders, like barely. And so it's not even wide enough for my shoulders, and it's only small enough for me to fall through backwards and not smash my head on the floor. If I'm, gosh, I have to get so small, get my knees almost to my chest, but not look like I'm balling up, kind of just make it look natural, So I have to basically sit into it and then fall backwards and just go, I think I fall 3 or 4 feet down, which is a couple feet on the floor, and then I have to, as soon as I hit, smash out and get really, really thin, so I'm not seen on camera from the side. And then on the second day, we went on the set, which was an indoor interior set inside of a movie studio that was built. So they had they had the floor that was up high, and then they built the stairs, and they had the cellar down in this, with all the different bottles and pickled stuff and all that kind of stuff, on basically a concrete floor that had, it was a real concrete floor. What else can I say? Wait, no, actually, wasn't a real concrete floor. It was a little bit risen wood painted to be like concrete. And I was eternally grateful, because landing on movie studio concrete, I've done it before, and it is the worst. It's like pressure treated concrete. It's like landing on metal, but not bouncy metal, like tungsten.
Yeah.
You hit it, and everything hurts. Everything is just disgustingly painful. So just having that little riser, that 1x4, just in between that and the plywood you're hitting, gives you just enough to where it's doesn't feel like you're hitting the surface of the sun. So yeah, so I ended up on that. I had to sit at the very top of the stairs, our squat, and then sit down into the first step and roll back like I'm going.
Yeah.
So I had to going back into that, and then fall onto a pad and learn my trajectory. Did that twice, and then it's okay, let's go, let's do it. And from that was like probably like an hour before we went on set, before I got the costume and all that kind of stuff. And then, wore the appropriate pads. I think Tom Elliott had a jockey vest, which was like basically like chainmail, but not, that's like little ringlets of plate mail that jockeys wear. Put that on my, over my torso just to protect, any type of sharp hits and stuff like that. And some elbow pads, and went out there and did it. So couldn't have a helmet. So definitely shouldn't hit my head if all else fails. I wanted to put maybe a little like armor flex or something in the back of my mask, but it was going to print, and the mask itself isn't, it's got a little like split in the back or whatever. I think they had a little split in the original, if I remember correctly, but it was going to print. So we ended up not doing that. So I was like, all right, don't hit your head. So, and we did it twice on the, on things. So we did the first one, and then the director goes, if we do a second one, which I think we are, can you sit up? Can you like hit the ground, boom, and then just sit up? And I was like, oh, I know what he wants. I'd seen the movie. I was like, I know what he wants. And so I was like, well, let me see. So I like laid there. He told me that when I was already on the ground, because they were getting all their, because sometimes whenever you finish a stunt, they want you to stay there so they can take pictures and all that kind of stuff for continuity. And I said, let me just try it. And I like put my legs straight out, and I realized that my boots, like I was actually complaining about this earlier in my head, like, man, these boots are so heavy, because they're like steel toe, or maybe not, but they're these heavy boots, heavier than any like shoes that I normally wear. And it just made the sit up just like boom, so easy, so easy. I was like, man, like I didn't think it was going to be that easy, because I'm pretty top heavy. So I was like, man, just doing a regular sit up, if I can't straight up my legs makes it easier, but like just doing it like sitting up like that with heavy boots made it a walk in the park. And then afterwards, as soon as I did it, everybody on set, like you hear people in the background go, oh, like everybody's like losing their minds, because a lot of people that work on the fans, the originals and all this other kind of stuff, or they had gone and watched it, and it seemed to be a hit on set. And from that second, I was like, oh, it's going to be a nice iconic little thing. So yeah, it was fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And so that was only one time with the sit up. It was one time without it, and then one time with the sit up.
Yeah, from my memory, yeah, that's the way.
Awesome. That's great. Now, do you remember what you were filming the very first time you put on the mask, and what that felt like the very first time they had you put on the mask?
The very first time it was when James was coming down the stairs, and they threw the mask on me really fast for some lineups, because he was going to get the makeup on his the special effects makeup on his cheek from where the slash was. So they had me throw the mask for lighting purposes. I was already in costume, so I was ready to go, because we were doing the fight scene in the kitchen that night. And it was when he was coming down the stairs, and I was just coming down there looking super creepy and just like walking and kind of doing the typical Michael Myers thing. So it gave me a little bit of time, a couple different like trial shots to kind of get the walk right and stuff. Because I walked down the stairs, and I walked towards the kitchen, through the living room, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that was the first time I put it on. I don't even think that I was actually filmed. Not like it wasn't in the film, right? It was where I was just doing lineups for James, but I got to do it with the mask, and I was actually hoping for that, because I didn't want to be in the mask for the first time that I was on film. I wanted to have a few trial runs just to kind of see what it looks like, what I'm doing, what it looks like on film. And then I didn't have to look, I just knew what certain mannerisms would look like on film, and what the best angles and stuff were, and things like that. Just the typical stunt person has to, oh, what does it look like this direction, or the actor, what does my face or the mask look like in this direction, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of thing. Yeah.
Man, it sounds awesome. And yeah, I mean, those are some iconic scenes, Michael and Laurie fighting again, and then that sit up like we talked about, and then the ending. You said that's mostly James, though, probably looking up with the flames as they're like saying their goodbyes to him. But I mean, doing that fight scene with Laurie Strode, and again, I guess on the day it probably hadn't set into you, or you're not thinking about horror fans are going to go nuts over this. I mean, you said you could hear the crew going nuts with the sit up. I mean, did you get any indication of what a big deal it was going to be to have this Laurie Strode and Michael going at it again when you were there, or did that come later?
It was explained to me. I mean, I'd seen And like I said, I was like a person that appreciated the movies. I was always into more like spiritual or psychological thrillers. But knowing, hearing it from the director and other people and James himself, they all knew how big of a deal all this would be. And but sometimes I try not to get too when I'm working, I try not to get too much into the like excitement and just more into the process itself. Because just like anything, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? So just focus on one step at a time, focus on what you can do best in that moment. And sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees if you're so focused on what you're doing. So and a lot of times in stunts, that's a good thing. Unless you're really like the main actor. I think somebody like James really had to like study the old films and really kind of like, whereas I had to study him. Like I was just copying him because like I wasn't trying to be any other Michael Myers. I was just trying to copy James. He was my, the at that point he was the master, right? He was the person that I was supposed to be copying. So that's what I did. I just did my job in the moment, and it was only later, whenever it came out, that I was like, oh, this is actually a lot bigger than you never know with remakes how much they're gonna, and the movie ton of remakes. I've done horror movies that have never gone to actual, I say to print, but have never gone to film or to studio. I mean, I've played the stunt double for The Collector on the new Collected movie. The third of the movies, it never came out. We did huge fight scenes and fire burns and all this other kind of stuff, and funding went away for it, and it was just like, now it's owned by a studio that hasn't picked it back up. I thought it was going to be an excellent film. I'd seen the first two movies. I was excited to do that. I actually got to play a lot of The Collector, but you never see them. It didn't go. It didn't end up going to film. So it was, you never try to get too excited in the moment. You just focus on what your job is and doing the best thing that you can.
That is true. I forgot about that. But yeah, that film's never. It's just been shelved indefinitely for the time being, hasn't it? And it's
Super sad.
done, I guess.
I'm telling you, the director of the film was like, you could just tell he was like an OG horror guy. Like he really, I forget his name. Like what, I don't know if somebody will probably tell you in the comments what his name was. But man, he was just a super cool dude. Like and like, but also had a good vision of what he wanted, but also like wanted the characters, the actors and stuff, people to be able to play that character, but giving them good direction. And there was just so many cool things we got to do, like big fight scenes, lots of different special effects in it. And I can't really give any of it away, I guess, because I'm technically under a NDA. But I'm telling you, it's a pity that movie has never gone to film, because we were almost done with it. Almost done with it. I don't know what the whole reason why it got canned last minute. It sounded like something financial, but you can't control that, because sometimes people just say like, oh, I'm not gonna make my money back fast enough, so I'm gonna pull my money. Like, it just blows your mind as a performer. You just want to see everything that you do go to, but a lot of stunt people, a lot of our stuff ends up on the cutting room floor anyway. So we, like, because they'll film all these huge stunt scenes, but if it doesn't tell the story under the amount of time they need it, then a lot of times those can the entire fight scene, that you did, and you spent 2 weeks pre-visiting for, and then another 3 days rehearsing with the actors, and then all of a sudden, like on the day you do the fight scene, they love it, and everybody's like, oh, this is gonna be really cool, and then you get to the film, you're like, where did the fight scene go? But that's the business, you know.
And like you said, that for that reason, you've got to concentrate on the journey and not the end result. But in the case of Halloween 2018, I mean, it did have the end result, and it was a huge success. Can you tell us about the first time you saw the finished film yourself, like your first viewing and your reaction to it?
Yeah, I went around Halloween, the time it came out, and my wife was like super excited about it. She's like, my husband's Michael Myers, so I was thinking, I said, we're get her. Like we didn't, I didn't go. They didn't have an Atlanta premiere or anything like that, I don't think, or not one that I could go to. So we just went and saw it as a family. And my wife was like walking around, like, "What? Should I tell everybody here that you are him?" And I was like, "Well, I'm technically not him. I'm a stunt guy, but I did a few things. I don't know what's going to be in the film. Like, honestly, I didn't know, what I did. Like, whatever I did was going to be in the film. I didn't know, because sometimes they'll take the film in a completely different direction, and you won't know. So, but when I saw it, I was like, "Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me." And we're sitting in the movie theater, and she's like beaming. Like I've never seen her so happy with any of the roles that I've done. You know, she didn't grow up she's European, so she didn't really grow up with a lot of like American horror movies. But she thought it was scary. She's like, "Oh my God, you were so scary." I was like, cool. Remember that next time we have an argument. So scary, super scary.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love that it was a family affair too. You know, everybody got to go and everybody was proud that Dad was representing as Michael as the shape.
I didn't take my kids. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I didn't take my kids. I didn't know how bad it was going to be in terms because they were
Well,
really
yeah,
young.
that might have been a little too young 5 years ago for this one.
Saw it
Yeah. Well, and of course it was a huge success, and it's hard to believe that was 5 years ago that the film came out. It's already been, you know, we just had the 5 year anniversary, and at the same time it was the 45th anniversary of the whole Michael Myers Halloween franchise. And of course you were out there at Pasadena at 45 Years of Terror, and we were there. And we got to connect for a few minutes in person out there, which was awesome. And I wanted to ask about your impression of that, because I mean, you've probably done fan events before, but what was your impression of that event specifically? Because for us, it's magical. It really is the way we as fans describe it, because it's just this one franchise. It's just people that love this one franchise specifically. But from your point of view, again, as one of those illustrious few that have been on screen in the mask, what was it like for you? What was that weekend experience for you?
Man, it was first of all, I'll say this, like horror fans are just the most chill fans ever. Like they're just like the most just like respectful and just naturally chill people you ever meet in your entire life. I've been to a lot of different cons over the years. I've been like Dragon Con in Atlanta and all that kind of stuff. And Dragon Con's a whole different like it's almost like Comic-Con out in LA. I've never been to those. I've never been to any other convention out in LA, but I've been to a couple Southeastern conventions, and including like Comic-Con like Montgomery, where I went and did an appearance there for just various things I've done over the years before I was Michael Myers. But like comic book fans and other fans are just like a different breed, right? But then like the horror fans were just like, man, I felt like I could just be friends with so many of these people. Like they're just like good folks, and I was like, this is really like cool. And I didn't feel like at any point that there was any pressure to just be anything but me. And I didn't feel like it. Like I felt like a lot of the people that were former Michael Myers and people that are stunt guys. I knew a lot of the people there, like especially the stunt guys. Like I know Corey Myers, and I know Eric Strong, and I know all these other different guys. I just gotten off Captain America 4 with Aaron Armstrong, and I was like, oh, okay, there you are. He's like, are you gonna be in Pasadena? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be there. He's like, well, we'll see you there. And
awesome.
turns out our tables were right next to each other. And so yeah, I mean, got to see all those guys that I knew, and got to see James again, and meet all the different people that played Michael and stuff. And I got my own personal piece of memorabilia signed by many of the different guys and stuff like that. It was a fun thing to just kind of have something personal that's like, I've never really made that big of a deal about anything, but like it was cool to get all those guys sign something for me and have it up kind of in my man cave, or I can look at it and go, if anything, I'm part of this. That's cool. Like that's something I can hang my hat on and say, like, maybe at the moment I didn't know how big a deal it was going to be, but to some people this is a big deal, and that to me is like it feels good to know that so many people like appreciate work that you've done, but not just work that I've done, but like work that people have blazed the trail before that, and I just get to be part of this legacy. So it's pretty cool. And the convention was run so smoothly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. I was absolutely astounded on how calm the convention was and how calm it was, because I've been to like Dragon Con, it's crazy, and then and then you go to something like this and everybody's just acting like full-blown adults, and you're like, whoa, these people are like they're here for the reasons. A lot of people want to meet the people, get their stuff, and hang out. That's all they want to do. So it was great. It was great.
That's awesome to hear. And now you said you got your memorabilia signed. I got to ask, what did you have them sign? Was it a mask, or what did you have multiple items or something from the set?
Screen printed posters.
Okay.
Myers with the autumn leaves one.
Yes.
there at the convention. I went and bought it from one of the guys there because I wanted to support the vendors and stuff. I ended up getting a couple mugs and all that kind of stuff. The custom mugs from some of the people. Still great to this day, by the way. The epoxy mugs are awesome. Got my wife like a ghost one that glows in the dark, awesome. And those people were great. And I went and bought one of those posters, and I was like, "Hey," I asked the guys that I was with there. They were kind of helped me, get me into the convention and kind of like let people know that I was there and stuff like that. Doug and all those guys, they're awesome folks, by the way. And they were like, "We'll get this signed for you." I was like, "Hey, I really appreciate that because I wanted something from the convention just to kind of be like, hey, and this is something I can remember this guy, Yeah. Including signing by, I got it signed by Castle himself. So I was very excited about that. I was like, wow, the OG.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, you are part of that legacy now, and I mean, I don't think there's any end in sight. I'm sure though you'll be invited back in 5 years when they do the 50th. I'm sure, and many other appearances. Now, I got to ask you a little bit more about Endgame. You mentioned that earlier, and working with Marvel on a couple other films I know. But I mean, doubling Thor on Endgame. Can you talk to us a little bit about that project, that experience?
Yeah. That was one where I just came in. They stuck me in a trailer and put me in costume, and I was technically playing Fat Thor. It was for a part in the movie where he was going to be fat for the fight scene. So we did a little bit of the fight scene. We did a little bit of motion capture, but that part ended up not going to film. But they did do all my motion capture for my VFX capture. So maybe I was in the film. I don't know. It's possible, but I did get to wear I got to wear the makeup. I got to wear the wig and the beard, and I got to don the armor, and I got to hold, wasn't Mjolnir. It was, the big storm, what's it called, Stormbringer.
Oh yeah, the axe. Yeah.
But I didn't grow up a huge Marvel comic book fan. Like I knew all the characters, but I didn't know every single. I didn't know his secondary weapon. So that was. And by the way, whenever we filmed that, that was a secret. I didn't know that was going to be in the film. I was like, oh, I'm going to use the hammer and stuff. Like, no, you're using this. And I was like, oh, what is this? And they're like, it's a secret. You don't tell anybody about it. I was like, oh, all right. So it was cool. It was cool. I think, but I can't really say. I'm not going to say what direction the script was going in at that point. They kept a lot. The thing is about working on a Marvel film is it wasn't so much this way on Captain America 4, but back and during the Avengers stuff, it was very much like you don't say anything, and they're not telling you much either. Unless you're on the core team where you're working every single day doing the previs and knowing the script changes, even then you might not know what direction they're going. And you're going to film 5 things and only one of them is going to go to the actual on screen. So that was a weird experience because they rushed in. They wouldn't let me wear my armor at base camp. I had to put the armor on set, right before you walk in. And whenever you weren't on camera, they took the armor off of you, so you couldn't take it.
That was just because of that secrecy that they didn't want paparazzi or any cameras seeing it going from building to building or something.
Because it's filmed in Fayetteville at Pinewood Studios, which is now Trilith. I think it was still Pinewood at the time though. And you have even the main Thor double, they would have him in a special room, Bobby Holland, and they would have him in a special room, away from everybody else if he had to keep his armor on. But I think if he had to leave, I was told that if he had to leave, take the armor off. You wear the under stuff, the undergarments and whatnot, but not the armor and all that stuff. Because that was a big deal. What armor would he be wearing for this movie? Because they would change it, from movie to movie. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. That wasn't the first time that's happened to me, but that was definitely the most hush hush of any of the movies. And you would see helicopters flying over, circling the movie studio, just trying to catch a glimpse. That's why
with their zoom lenses.
Yeah, it was like that with Hunger Games too. Mockingjay 1 and 2, we were filming out in not Conyers. It was I can't think of it. It's a place called OFS. It used to be a fiber optics and a bunch of other stuff, manufacturing plant. They completely gutted and turned into movie studios. We were filming Hunger Games out there for part of it. A lot of it's filmed at Screen Gems in Atlanta, but this one was filmed to the northeast of Atlanta, and Norcross. It was out in Norcross. And that, man, there was every single day that we were doing outside scenes, and we would do these mass battle scenes outside. There would be helicopters circling us, filming us, trying to figure out what was happening, and like putting stuff out online, and all this kind of stuff. So that's always a risk that you run into, and that's why a lot of these big films are really secretive. Just the last film that I was on, Captain America 4, you know, like we were filming out of an airport, and the paparazzi the next day leaked a whole bunch of stuff, you know, like different characters that are in the movie and stuff. I'm not going to perpetuate because I was doubling one of those characters, but it wasn't me who was taking a picture of. They took a picture of the actor out there and a bunch of other people, and they were speculating on what characters are going to be in the film and all this other kind of stuff. It was all over social media, and people were losing their minds about it on set. Like, man, like we were trying to keep this a secret, so it's a big surprise for everybody, you know. So, but yeah, that's a fear you run into when you're working on set, and everybody's going to want to get that little. It brings me back to the idea of like, I wasn't on this film, but whenever the Batmobile was leaked, the pictures of the Batmobile, whenever the new Batman movies were being filmed, and that was like a huge thing. But I don't know.
Yeah, and it does happen, you know. I mean, and on that level where it's like, you know, Marvel, and yeah, I mean they are always in the sky like that. And it's crazy. Now you mentioned Captain America 4. Are there other projects we can look for you in? I guess you can't say anything about the next Captain America, like you said. You can't talk about much, but we can look for you in that, I guess. And are there other upcoming projects that we can look forward to seeing you in as well?
Well, I mean, we were just on strike for, you know, over half a year. I was on Cap 4 for about 3 months, so I did a whole bunch of different stuff for that. For that, doubled a guy, played a couple different soldiers. You know, it's not a big secret. There's a bunch of soldiers in the film.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
You know, always going to be police or FBI or SWAT or soldiers.
that's a scoop. There's soldiers. We got a scoop. There's
yeah, it's all that stuff. It's like always the case, especially in any Marvel film. So you know, so I was playing a bunch of those and got a job doubling somebody. Did that. Ended up being a tactical advisor for a few days on the film, helping a couple actors clear rooms and all that kind of stuff, and you know, just look the part. And they were excellent, by the way. And so that was a fun thing to get to do. But yeah, that was basically what I was doing at the beginning of the year, leading up to that. Yeah, I mean, there's been a number of things over the years. I mean, you can look up the things I've done. I mean, like I did Lovecraft Country. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh yeah,
TV show.
I watched that.
Yeah,
great.
Helped choreograph some of the final fight scenes for that thing. I played the I want to say Demigorgon, but they're not called Demigorgons. It's the things that the creatures that burrow through the ground and come up and like look really huge. I don't remember what they're called, but I played those. Like I was in a motion capture suit and doing all the stuff, and I would hold like the head and stuff, and I would do it. So I did a lot of stuff for Lovecraft Country. I was on that for probably every other episode. Also, before that, I was on a TV show that got canceled. Unfortunately, it was, man, had so much great potential, such great showrunners, such great, you know, the director was awesome, and the costumers were amazing. Gotham Knights, TV show. Yeah, on CW, and it was supposed to be picked up by HBO Max. We thought it was going to go, but it ended up not going. I was playing the Talon on there, so I played Felix Harmon version of the Talon, and man, that was probably to date my favorite role to ever get to embody, because I literally did a combination of like what I thought a ninja would do mixed with Michael Myers. Like that's the way I played that character. And whenever you watch the show, it's geared towards like a young teen audience. But then when you get to my character, it's not just the way that I played it, but the way they filmed it, the way they did the shots, the lighting. It was just so ominous and like so terrifying. Like when you watch it, you get chills. Like people, I was like, and that's not just the performance. That's the way they did it. And there's like this beginning scene where they kind of like introduce the Talon formally, and he has this first fight scene with them. And he's like stabbing the car, and gas is coming out and sets the car on fire by sparking the ground and all this other kind of stuff. There's all this fire around him, and they look around. I do like the Michael Myers turn with the face, but I'm like incorporating like a little. They're supposed to be part of this thing called the Court of Owls. So everything's supposed to be kind of bird-like. So I kind of like turn my head like Michael Myers, and then kind of like tilt my head like a bird would, you know, like an owl would. So that's all this kind of going into play. But that was the funnest thing I got to do, because I was probably in every other episode of Gotham Knights. And I played a bunch of different stuff too. I didn't just play Felix Harmon, but I got to work with all the actors and stuff from that, and got to see a lot of stuff from start to finish. Help really kind of like dial in a lot of the fights for people, practice with the actors and whatnot, and just working for my favorite stunt coordinator in the world, Dave Morzo, and his assistant Jeremy Connor, just a beast in his own right. Those guys are amazing, and I would work with them on everything if I could, because we did a whole last couple seasons of Legacies together. That was another show that ended up being canceled. I think it was like after what, 5 or 7 seasons. It was a lot. It was a spinoff show as well from the original, so got to double a lot of people on Legacies. I played a bad guy on Legacies, and a bunch of different other doubles for the show, and you name it. It was one of those interesting things that is my video still there, by the way? My phone just went to 20%.
Oh yes, yeah.
But yeah, so I got to work with a lot of people that I love, and that was Gotham Knights was definitely what I feel like was, after Michael Myers, was the next height of my career, because Felix Harmon is an absolute like staple of the Court of Owls timeline. Like he also mass killer. So all that criminology kind of came into it, like what makes Felix Harmon tick, and they give him this stuff called Electrum, what makes him into like a superhuman, but also like makes him almost like a zombie style character. Pretty cool. And that was one where I was like, man, I really kind of felt like I got them. So like with James and Michael Myers, I had to still kind of copy what James was doing, because he was leading the show, right? He was Michael. But with Felix Harmon, I was Felix Harmon. So I got to really, like, I made the character. So that was the first time that I really got to not just double somebody and kind of like fill those shoes and like, oh, this is cool, I get to put on the stuff and copy somebody. No, I got to be the guy. So it really kind of made me just like, wow, this was kind of the moment where I was like, I get to do whatever I want to really embody this character. And that was a fun experience.
And it does sound like it was kind of a full circle moment for you too, with, like you said, everything you had studied and your previous career and previous roles coming into play, and bringing all that full circle and using everything else you've done. And then I got to ask about Venom too, because that came out right around the same time as Halloween 2018, right? So I guess you shot that probably before
Which one?
Halloween. Venom?
Oh, Venom, yeah. So Venom, I only filmed one scene in Venom, and it's the one where Venom he's talking to him through the woods, like they're out in the woods, and there's these soldiers out in the woods, and they're all kind of like lined up looking for Venom, or like walking around through the woods looking for Venom, and he's just like snatching them up into the trees and sideways and up, and so that I got to do this ratchet like all day, where I'm just getting snapped out of frame. I'm literally shooting probably 30 feet straight up into the air on a line, on a wire, and it's like the funnest jobs as a stunt guy is the ones where you don't have to take any like hits. You don't take any but you're doing what's considered dangerous, because if that line snaps, you're falling 30 feet. But it's not going to snap, because if you're running with a good rigging crew, which Venom had a really good rigging crew, then like you're safe. So it's a fun day for you to I'm just here for the ride, and it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. Yeah, just along for the ride. And yeah, I mean, you looking at your IMDb and just hearing some of the stories you're telling, I mean, you've definitely landed in some some crazy iconic worlds, that whether it be DC and the Court of Owls like you're talking about, or Marvel with Endgame and all this stuff, and Haddonfield with Michael Myers. I mean, all over the place. And I guess to wrap it up and to bring it back to Michael, what are your thoughts on why, like we said, it's been 45 years now, they're talking about there's going to be a TV series, and of course there'll be more movies down the road. Just as a horror fan, and what do you think the appeal is? Why is this franchise 45 years strong? I'm sure in 5 years we could do this again, and it'll still be going just as strong. Do you have thoughts on why this franchise is so unkillable as it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever you find a film that hits the archetype correctly, if any of your fans are Carl Jung fans, they would or SETIers, they would understand that like when you get a story that hits the perfect archetype, like, and really embodies that universal emotion or universal character that everybody, that kind of encompasses that set of, you know, just characteristics perfectly, then that's going to resonate, you know, timelessly with people, right? There's certainly horror movies in the past that are not timeless, right? One that comes to mind, I'm going to make a lot of people get mad when I say this, is, you know, when you watch the old Exorcist movie, like I rewatched it and I was like, man, this is so scary when I was a kid, right? Because I grew up in a religious family. It was all, you know, the way that everything happened. And then you realize as you watch it now, today, it's like it's like the scariest parts of the movie that were scary back then, or just like it's a young girl screaming sexual obscenities. And back then that was terrifying because it was so off character and so disturbing that really kind of created like the really like this demonic possession feeling. But now, like, you see all types of crazy stuff on television and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So like we're kind of desensitized to that. So the actual creepiness or scare factors in the movie, you know, are done better later in other movies. It's been like really streamlined, or what's the word I'm looking for? Extracted down to like even a better form, right? It's still a great movie for what it is, right? But it's like there are movies that have built upon it. But I think with Michael Myers, it's like they got the formula right from the beginning, and it's something that's necessarily cultural to a time period. It's something that's primal inside of us that we are all terrified of, right? Especially if you don't see yourself as like a physically imposing person. To see somebody that's, you know, 6'3" plus, you know, coming after you mindlessly and just being unstoppable, unkillable, and just like unreconcilable. You cannot convince this person to not do what they're about to do. That's terrifying to people. And I think that no matter what time period you go to, it's just going to continue to resonate with people as like a terrifying thing to happen. So I think that Michael Myers is something that's like a timeless character, even more so. Like a lot of these other slasher movies that came after were copies of Halloween, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and,
definitely.
Right. And so as long as the original genre does it right, then and stays true to what made it popular to begin with, and not try to be something else, I think that, man, Halloween's going to continue to live on.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think there's any end in sight. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for hanging out and talking to us this evening. This has just been awesome getting to know you and hear some of your stories from the set, and I'm sure we'll do it again, and we'll talk about other stories from other sets, because you've got a lot of stories, and I know you got a lot more coming that we're going to be following and looking forward to seeing. And we're definitely going to look forward to looking for you in Captain America 4 soon. And again, I just can't thank you enough for talking to us today.
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to everybody and just kind of, you know, hang out and just chill with you and just kind of shoot the, you know, like just kind of figure out where things are going to go from here, and you know, talk shop about it. But I'll say this: I don't know if I remember how many more stories I got under my belt, because I've hit my head so many times over the years. I'll try to scrap up a few more. We'll see what else I got.
Well, if we can work some out. I think we can, you know, as they come to you, we can do different installments if we have to.
It's like a scattered constellation, and I just kind of knock out, comes another one.
Yeah. When you get knocked in the head on the next set, then maybe it'll jog some other memories, and then we can talk about those as they come back to you.
Sure.
Well, again, man, this has been great, and I know our viewers are going to love it, and fans of Michael Myers are definitely going to love hearing all of this, and they're going to look forward to meeting you if they haven't already. I know a lot of them did get to meet you like we did out at H45, and I'm sure you're going to be making other appearances, and they're going to enjoy meeting you as we did. And we never like saying goodbye. Every day's Halloween, so instead, I'm just going to say Happy Halloween 2024.
Happy Halloween.